Hi, my name is Joseph Chen, and today the topic I want to share is the return of the old forces, revealing new campaign connected to a missing cyber mercenary firm. So I am a threat researcher from Chen Micro, and I am now focusing on APT threat hunting and threat intelligence. And here is today's agenda. And here we start. Introduction. So back to February 2024, there was a GitHub contained a massive leak of documents found by people. And this document connected to a company in China called iSun. The document revealed the details of how the company conducted the global APT attack against many countries for cyber espionage purpose. Besides that, it also revealed how the company worked with their government as a contractor, and also how the company worked with the other similar company, like the one behind APT41. After the leak, the US government took series of action to respond on it. Meanwhile, in China, we can find some public information saying that the company is facing multiple judicial cases in China, which including sales contract dispute, labor dispute, and the financial loan dispute. And many information shows the company now is stopped in operation now. In Chen Micro, we published two research which is possible related to the company. The first one we published in 2022 called Earth-Luska. And in 2023, there is a research from PwC. They found the relationship between Earth-Luska and iSun. You can check the research I note here. In 2024, we found another threat actor called Earth-Krahan. And we found Earth-Luska and Earth-Krahan collaborate together to distribute shadow paid. However, the relationship between iSun and Earth-Krahan is unknown. But interestingly, both groups stopped their activity after the leak. In 2025, we were able to identify another new campaigns. One of them, we found it's connected to Earth-Luska, and another one we found it's connected to Earth-Krahan. So we investigate them. And today we are going to share our findings from these two new threat campaigns. The first campaign we called Pound Snake. So the first activity of Pound Snake we found from October 2024. They target to the government and the financial companies. The most of victims they targeted were located in Asia, but we also found one from US. The backdoor they used including Cobalt Strike and the V-Shield, but they also use a proprietary backdoor like Reshield and the Snake C2 and the NeoBeacon. And just before this conference, there is a report released from Vettel Security called JSAC2026. It's the same campaign as we are going to share today. They have covered some details we are going to share. But today, I will also share some of the details that haven't been published yet. So here is the list of victims targeted by this campaign. At the beginning, it's targeted to the financial company in India. And from the 2025, at the beginning, we found it's a shift to Japan, but later they also shift to the government organization in many Southeast Asia countries. And recently, they shift their target back to financial company again. So Pound Snake attacked their victims by exploiting the public-facing server. They use the scanning tool to find the vulnerability and exploit it. So here is the example. They exploit the server and get the shell from their SQL server. They use the following command, including they use the cert util and the PowerShell to download VPN files. They also create a new account and enable the remote desktop service. Besides that, during the middle of 2025, we found Pound Snake also sent a spear phishing email to target the government. The email attached a backdoor, and the backdoor will download more tools and the backdoor to the victims. And here is the list of attachments that they used to target Thailand and the Vietnam governments. While the name is different, but the content is the same. They are the same binary of an unknown backdoor we called JSAC2026. So JSAC2026 is a very simple .NET backdoor. It only has two functions. One is download a file from a URL, and another one is execute the system command. It's very similar to another backdoor they used called reshelled. They have the same capability. We will discuss on it later. And from the binary, we can find the PDB string inside the malware. There is the name of the backdoor. Called it's version 4 JSAC2026. And also inside the payload, we can see that they used compromise the Vietnam government website as their CNC server to control this backdoor. So after the victim execute the attachment in the phishing emails, JSAC2026 trying to download a lot of files. The first set of files they download is another backdoor called NeoBeacon. And 6 minutes later, we found that they download soft ether VPN files. And another 7 minutes later, it's download files for executing Cobalt Strike. And here is the command executed by JSAC2026. We found that it copied itself to the program data folder, then create a scheduled task to persist itself. Then it's also create another 2 tasks to persist the other 2 malware it's downloaded. So one of the malware it downloads is a new malware called NeoBeacon. NeoBeacon is a cross-platform backdoor. It has a Windows version implemented with .NET and a Linux version implemented with Gold. We found NeoBeacon used Microsoft OneDrive as the service and communicate to the service with Microsoft Graph API. So in the TASC31 report, they also named this malware as OneDrive Beacon. Both of us has Beacon in their name is because we found on the binary they have the product name called Beacon on it. The backdoor is also very similar but different to another malware called Nosy Door or Lucky Strike, reported by ESET and Solar. So they are likely a same family of a backdoor. And from previous report, they found this family is possible a commercial backdoor that's used by many Chinese threat actors. And here is the execution trend of Windows version and the Linux version NeoBeacon. On Windows, they have a multiple file. Some of them were used for the leaving of the land execution to load their loader. The loader will then decrypt a payload, which is the real payload of NeoBeacon. On Linux, they don't have any protection. You can execute the ELF directly. But both of them need to read another file called tmp.dat. It's an encrypted backdoor configuration. So on Windows, NeoBeacon uses the technique called .NET App Domain Manager injection. They abuse the application from Microsoft User Experience Virtualizations. They use the application to read the .NET config and then load their malicious loader called behavior.dll. Inside the loader, it's trying to decrypt the payload of a NeoBeacon with AES algorithm. The key and the file name is embedded as below shows. So after NeoBeacon launched, it tried to decrypt the configuration. And here is the step they used to decrypt the configuration. The first step is they use the base64 to decoding it. Then it's rotate each byte of the payload to write by 2 positions. Then it's performed the AES decryption again with the key and the initialization vectors embedded in the backdoor. They also use the same steps of decryption and the encryption to protect the CNC file they upload or download to the OneDrive service. And here is the decrypt configuration. At the first part, you can see it has information like client ID, token, and the secret. This is used for the authentication on Microsoft service, so they can communicate to the Microsoft Graph API and use the OneDrive as the CNC. The second part of the configuration is the configuration to define the CNC details on OneDrive. For example, the task folder name they defined is the name of the folder to download the malware commands. And the receive folder name is the name of the folder for the backdoor to upload their execution result of commands. They used this configuration to control the file name and the folder name on OneDrive. And here is the list of commands supported by NeoBeacon. The capabilities including system command execution, file operations, and executing additional plugins. It also implements a list of functions that's trying to mimic Windows commands. So they can execute this command to get the result without create another child process to call this command. It reduces the risk for that the child process could be detected by some behavioral-based solution, since it's possible suspicious. At the Linux side, they remove most of function most of commands that support only for Windows. They keep only function for command execution and the file operations. So back to SNAC C2, we found Pound Snake, they use the backdoor many times. The first campaign we found in the phishing attack is Snake C2 version 4. But we also found the Snake version 3 in the other attack of this campaign. And basically, version 3 and the version 4 are the same backdoor, but they use different CNC server. Version 4, they use the compromised server, but version 3, they have a dedicated CNC server. And below is the one of version 3 samples we found. It tries to communicate to a government website to get a string, which is the real CNC server it's going to use. So they use the compromised website as their job resolver. So during September 2025, we were able to identify another new malware used by Pound Snake. From the PDB string, it shows the name is YCat version 2 plugins. However, we consider it as a new variant of Snake C2 because they have a similar code and a similar CNC API designs. This malware, they have 3 different files. They have one loader, which will load another encrypted payload, is the main payload of this new variant. Then the backdoor will read another encrypted file, which is the configuration has the real CNC server address. So we can find some code overlap between this new variant and the old Snake C2, but not many. And we also found their CNC design is the same. Here we list that both of them has 3 APIs, one for register the victims, another one for get the command from CNC server, and another one is send the command execution result to the CNC server. However, the new variant supports more functions. So we suspect that the developer is still working on this backdoor and trying to enhance it with more capability. And one more thing I want to share is that before Pound Snake start use the Snake C2, we found that they also used another malware called Reshell. We consider Reshell is an earlier version of Snake C2 because their capabilities are similar. And so far, we only found Krahan and Pound Snake used this backdoor. This is why we initially consider these 2 groups are connected. We will discuss more connection later. So another campaign we are going to share is called Willy Code. So we found Willy Code since May 2025. They targeted to government and the education organization and the hospital. They use the backdoor like CobbleStrike, Vshell, and the Silver. At the beginning, we found the Willy Code target to a lot of Thailand government organizations. But later of the year, we found that they moved their activity to Philippines and Taiwan also. So same as the previous campaign, Willy Code also targeted the public-facing server. They exploit the vulnerability to get the shell from SQL Server. They used the following command, including PowerShell to download backdoor files. They also create a service to persist their backdoors. And interesting finding is that they usually create a service with a service name has a prefix called WPN user service, following by 8 random characters. We found this similar service name in multiple victims compromised by Willy code. The campaign also exploited two new vulnerabilities. For example, we found Willy code exploited to react to shell vulnerability recently to target the government right after the vulnerability released. They used the exploit to download backdoor from a GitHub repository they created. Here is the list of hack tools they used during their attacks. And all of them are open sourced and available on internet. So I just made this table for you to have a reference. And so far, everything we found from this campaign are not special from the other attackers, except the loader they used. They use this DLL side-loading execution chain to run their backdoor, including Cobalt Strike and the vShell. And the DLL loader they use have been reported previously called the Hyperbro launcher. So in 2022, Symantec reported Bud Wong's reactor used the loader to load Hyperbro backdoor. Bud Wong is associated to APT27. In 2023, Recorded Future reported a threat actor called Red Hotel. Red Hotel is the same actor we reported as Earth-Luska. So they mentioned Earth-Luska also used this loader to load Blue Rental and Cobalt Strike. In 2025, we found Willy code used this loader again to load their Cobalt Strike and the vShell. So the loader has a unique sequence of decoding operations to restore the backdoor payload from their files. The decoding operations are, for each byte, it performs XOR add, XOR add, XOR add, and XOR with a key embedded in the loader to recover the original data. So we investigate all of the loader used by Bud Wong, Earth-Luska, and the Willy code. Here is the table we summarized, including the loader and the payload file name and the key inside the loader. We can find that there is some overlap between different groups, but we also can see that Willy code tried to change the payload file name and the key to a different one. Besides that, we can also find an overlap on the PDB string in the sample used by different groups. Here is the overlap of build paths. They have some Chinese word. It's translated as AV evasion, DLL hijack, and the clean binary. Besides the loader, we also found another overlap between Earth-Luska and the Willy code. In previous research, Earth-Luska was found to use a spatial URL pattern in their Cobalt Strike CNC profile. And in the Cobalt Strike used by Willy code, we found the same profiles. Both of them has this spatial URL path and the same user agent strings in their profile. So we collected all Cobalt Strike server used the same pattern in their profile. In 2023 and 24, you can find some server that has been attributed to us Luzca. And from May 2025, we found the server are mostly belonging to Willy Code. Some of the server here doesn't have any attribution, but generally, we can see the profile doesn't seem to be used by many people. It shows the spatial connection between us Luzca and the Willy Code. And here is the summary of our attribution. So for Pound Snake, we associate the campaign to us Krahan because both of them use the same backdoor called reshared. Besides that, they also have a similar TTPs. They tend to use the compromised government website for the other attacks. And both of them use SoftEther VPN. They renamed the SoftEther binary to a special file name called test, LLST.exe. This shows a unique TTP connections. However, there is also some difference. Us Krahan target to global countries, but so far we only see Pound Snake active mostly in Southeast Asia region. And us Krahan used a special backdoor called Xdealer, but we found the Pound Snake doesn't use it. Instead, it used another malware called NeoBeacon. So we found that these two groups are connected, but still has some difference. And we assert the attribution with a medium-high confidence so far. For another campaign, Willy Code, we associate the campaign with us Luzca. We found that they use the same backdoor loader and the same Cobalt Strike CNC profiles. But besides that, we don't find any other unique overlap between them. And us Luzca targeted to country around global, but Willy Code now only focused on the country in Southeast Asia region. So far, we assert the attribution with low confidence. Here is the picture shows the summary of our attribution. We found a new campaign has the connection to the previous threat actor related to ISUNT. While we cannot confirm whether this activity were from these companies, it could be possible that their employee has left their company and moved to a new organization, but they still use the same tools or TTPs in their new jobs. That's why we are seeing this association in the new campaign. But this is just all my speculations. And conclusions. So today we introduced the two campaigns, Pound Snake and the Willy Code. Both of them has some connection to previous threat actor related to the company ISUNT. These two campaigns use the loader and the backdoor from previous threat actors, but they also bring some new backdoor like NeoBeacon and the Snake C2 we introduced. And for takeaway, I want to highlight the difficulty of attribution to Chinese threat actor nowadays. Before, we used unique TTP and the backdoor to attribute the threat actors. However, we saw that people could possibly move between different companies. So the same TTP could be also found among the different APT threat actors. And for backdoors, they could acquire this backdoor from malware developers. So any new malware you found has the potential to be used by many threat actors because it's like a malware supply chain. Even at the beginning, it looks unique. So we needed to be careful and rely on multiple evidence rather than a single evidence to attribute this threat actor. And the more independent evidence you have, then you will have a higher confidence on your attributions. And we provide the indicator for both Pound Snake and the Willy code for your reference. And this is all my presentations. Thank you.